He swore the moon would never choose for him again, until her mark-proved oaths mean nothing to fate. The winter coronation had turned King Aldric's heart to stone. 3 years since the treaty. 3 years since he buried his first mate in frozen ground. 3 years of ruling without mercy, because mercy had only ever brought him loss. The slave markets of White Peak operated under moonlight, where no one asked questions and coins spoke louder than bloodlines. Aldric walked through the cages wrapped in a cloak that hid his royal insignia. He came for information, not purchase. Rumors spoke of a spy ring operating through the southern trade routes, and slaves heard everything their masters whispered. But the moon had other intentions. She sat in the corner of the last cage, knees drawn to her chest, face turned away from the torchlight. Her hair was matted with dirt and blood. Her dress, if it could be called that, hung in strips across her shoulders. The slaver called her 23, because names were luxuries reserved for those with value. Aldric would have walked past, should have walked past. Then she lifted her head. Her eyes were gray like morning fog, and when they met his, something ancient stirred in his chest. The bond he had sworn never to feel again ignited like wildfire under his ribs. His wolf surged forward, clawing against his control, howling one word over and over. Mate. No. He had promised, sworn on his dead mate's grave that he would never let the moon dictate his heart again. Love was a weakness that cost kingdoms. He had learned that lesson in blood and ash, but his eyes betrayed him. They traced the line of her throat, searching for what he knew would be there, and beneath the grime and bruises, he saw it, the crescent mark, faint silver, barely visible, but unmistakable. The goddess had chosen. The slaver approached with a grin full of broken teeth. Interested in that one, my lord? She's damaged goods, I'll admit. Mute mostly. Hasn't spoken in months. But she's young enough to train and... How much? Aldric's voice came out rougher than intended. The slaver's eyes gleamed with greed. For you, 30 silver. Aldric dropped a gold coin into the man's palm. Open the cage. The slaver fumbled with the keys, and the girl, 23, pressed herself further into the corner. She didn't look at Aldric again. She looked at the ground, at the walls, anywhere but at the man whose scent was already wrapping around her like a claim. When the cage door swung open, she didn't move. Aldric stepped inside. The space was too small for an alpha king, but he crouched anyway, making himself less threatening. His wolf snarled at the instinct. Kings didn't kneel, but mates required different rules. I won't hurt you, he said quietly. She flinched anyway. He noticed the scars then. Thin white lines across her wrists, burns on her palms. Someone had tried to break her and nearly succeeded. His jaw tightened. Whoever owned her before would answer for this, but later. Right now, she needed safety, not vengeance. My name is Aldric, he continued, keeping his voice soft. I'm taking you out of here. You don't have to speak. You don't have to trust me. But you're coming with me. Her eyes flicked to his face for just a heartbeat. In that moment, he saw something that made his breath catch. Not fear, but exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that came from surviving too long without hope. He held out his hand. She stared at it like it was a trap. Maybe it was. The bond between them was already forming, invisible threads pulling tight. She would feel it too, eventually. The goddess didn't ask permission. She simply decided, and mortals had no choice but to obey or suffer. But Aldric had spent 3 years denying the moon. He could control this. He would keep her safe, fulfill his duty as her alpha, and never let his heart break again. It was possible. It had to be possible. Her hand moved slowly, trembling as it touched his palm. The contact sent electricity racing up his arm. His wolf roared in triumph, and for a moment Aldric forgot how to breathe. The bond snapped into place with brutal certainty, And he knew, had always known, from the moment their eyes met, that his carefully built walls were nothing against fate. He pulled her gently to her feet. She swayed, weak from hunger and cold. Without thinking, he swept her into his arms. She was lighter than she should be, fragile as winter glass. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair. She didn't respond, but her fingers curled weakly into his cloak, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had tried to erase her. Aldrich carried her out of the slave market, past the leering faces and the rattling chains, into the snow-bright night. His guards waited with horses, their expressions carefully neutral when they saw their king cradling a slave girl like she was made of moonlight. As they rode toward the castle, Aldrich made a silent vow. He would protect her, provide for her, give her everything she needed to heal. But he would not love her. He couldn't. The moon had already taken everything once. He wouldn't give her the chance to do it again. The castle physicians worked in silence, their hands gentle as they cleaned wounds and wrapped bandages. Aldrich watched from the doorway of the healing chamber, arms crossed, expression carved from granite. She hadn't made a sound. Not when they bathed her, not when they treated the infected burns, not even when the head healer reset her broken finger with a sickening crack. Mute, the slaver had said. But Aldrich suspected it was something worse. Silence chosen, not inflicted. The kind of silence that came from screaming until your voice gave out and learning that no one came to save you anyway. When the physicians finished, they bowed and retreated. Aldrich stepped into the room. She sat on the edge of the bed, wearing a simple white shift, her wet hair combed and falling past her shoulders. Clean, she looked even younger than he'd thought. 18, maybe 19, too young to carry the mark of a king. "They'll bring food soon," he said, keeping distance between them. "You can eat as much as you want. No one here will hurt you." Her eyes remained fixed on her hands. Aldrich exhaled slowly. "I need to explain something. What you're feeling, the pull between us, it's called a mate bond. The moon goddess chooses pairs. We didn't ask for this. But it's real, and it's not going away. Nothing, not even a blink. I'm not going to force anything," he continued. "You'll have your own chambers, your own space. I'll provide protection and resources. But I need you to understand, I can't. I won't." He stopped. "How did you tell your fated mate that you refused to love them?" A knock interrupted the tension. A servant entered with a tray of food, roasted meat, bread, fruit, soup. The girl's eyes went to the tray, and for the first time, Aldrich saw raw hunger break through her carefully blank expression. "Eat," he said gently. She didn't move until he stepped back toward the door. Only when he was far enough away did she reach for the bread, tearing into it with shaking hands. She ate like someone who expected the food to be stolen at any moment, fast, desperate, barely chewing. It made his chest ache. "Slowly," he murmured. "No one's taking it from you." She paused, bread halfway to her mouth, and looked at him. Really looked at him. Her gray eyes were searching, trying to understand why a king would care if a slave girl choked. "What's your name?" he asked. Silence. "You don't have to tell me," he said. "But you're not 23 anymore. You're not a number. If you want to choose a new name, you can. If you want to keep the one you had before, that's yours too." Her lips parted slightly, as if she might speak, but then she closed them again and returned to eating. Aldrich watched her until she finished. When the tray was empty, exhaustion pulled at her features. The healing and the food had drained what little strength she had left. "Sleep," he said. "I'll be in the next room if you need anything." He turned to leave. Why? The word was so quiet he almost missed it. But his wolf heard everything, and his entire body went still. He looked back at her. She was staring at him with those fog-gray eyes, her expression caught between suspicion and something that might have been hope. "Why?" she repeated, stronger this time. Her voice was hoarse from disuse, but it was there, real. Why what? Why did you buy me? Each word seemed to cost her. What do you want? Aldrich could have lied, could have said he needed information or servants, or that he was simply feeling charitable. But she had the mark on her neck. She would know lies eventually. Because the moon chose you, he said simply, and I won't let my mate rot in a cage. Her hand moved unconsciously to her throat, fingers brushing the crescent mark she probably didn't even know was there. I don't understand, she whispered. Neither do I, Aldrich admitted. But you're safe now. That's all that matters tonight. He left before she could ask more questions, before the bond could pull him back to her side, before his control could slip and he could make promises he'd sworn never to make again. In his own chambers, he poured a glass of whiskey and stared into the fire. His first mate, Ilara, had been a political match that became genuine love. She was fierce and brilliant, the daughter of a neighboring alpha. Their bond had been instant and overwhelming. He'd thought himself blessed. Then came the war, the betrayal, the night he found her body broken in the snow, killed by the same allies they'd trusted. Love had made him weak, distracted. He'd failed to see the conspiracy until it was too late. He'd sworn then, on her grave, under the full moon, that he would never let his heart rule again. He would be the king his people needed, cold, strategic, alone. And now the goddess had marked a broken slave girl as his second chance. The cruelty of it was almost poetic. Aldrich drained his glass and closed his eyes. He could feel her even through the walls, the gentle rhythm of her breathing, the way her heartbeat was starting to sync with his. The bond was working its ancient magic, weaving them together whether they wanted it or not. He would protect her, honor the bond enough to keep her safe. But he would not love her. He couldn't survive losing another mate, even if it meant fighting fate itself. The girl chose the name Sarah. She whispered it to him 3 days later, when he brought her books from the library. She'd been staring at the shelves in her room, fingers trailing over spines she couldn't read, and when he offered to teach her, something shifted in her expression. Sarah, she said quietly. My mother called me Sarah. Aldrich nodded. Sarah, it's beautiful. She almost smiled. Almost. The bond grew stronger each day. He felt her emotions now. Flickers of fear when footsteps approached too quickly. Waves of grief when she thought she was alone. Rare sparks of curiosity when she explored the castle gardens. His wolf demanded he go to her, comfort her, claim her fully. He refused. Instead, he kept his distance. He provided everything she needed, clothes, food, tutors, safety, but he never stayed long. Never touched her unless absolutely necessary. Never let the bond dictate his actions. It was torture. Sarah didn't make it easier. She watched him with those gray eyes that saw too much, asking questions without words. Why did he avoid her? Why did he flinch when their hands accidentally brushed? Why did he leave rooms the moment she entered? On the 7th night, she came to his study. He looked up from his correspondence to find her standing in the doorway, wrapped in a thick robe against the winter cold. Her hair was loose, catching the firelight, and the mark on her neck seemed to glow faint silver. You can't sleep? He asked. She shook her head. I can feel you. His jaw tightened. The bond. It'll settle eventually. Will it? She stepped further into the room. Or will it keep hurting? It doesn't hurt. Liar. The word hung between them like a blade. Sarah moved closer, and Aldrich forced himself to stay seated, to not retreat. She stopped in front of his desk, her expression fierce despite the trembling in her hands. I don't understand you, she said. You saved me. You gave me a name, a home, a life. But you look at me like I'm a punishment. Oh, you're not a punishment. Then what am I? He couldn't answer that. didn't know how to explain that she was both salvation and doom, that every instinct screamed at him to pull her close while every memory warned him to push her away. "The bond doesn't mean we have to," he started. "I know what you lost," Sarah interrupted. Her voice was soft but steady. "The servants talk. They told me about your first mate, about the war, about the promise you made." Aldrich stood slowly, anger flashing through him. "Then you understand why this can't happen. I understand that you're afraid. I'm not afraid. You're terrified." She held his gaze. "You're terrified that if you let yourself feel anything, you'll lose control, that loving me will make you weak, that the moon will take me away, just like she took her." He wanted to deny it, wanted to tell her she was wrong, but she wasn't. "I didn't ask for this either," Sarah continued. "I didn't ask to be marked by a king who can't stand to be in the same room as me. But I'm here, the bond is here, and pretending it doesn't exist won't make it go away." "What do you want from me?" His voice came out harsh. "Nothing you're not willing to give." She turned toward the door, then paused. "But you should know, I've already lost everything. I've been broken and thrown away and left for dead, and I survived. So if you think keeping your distance will protect me, you're wrong. I don't need protection from the bond. I need protection from a king who treats his fate like a curse." She left before he could respond. Aldrich stood alone in his study, fists clenched, wolf howling in his chest. She was right, about all of it, and that made it so much worse. Because if he admitted the truth, if he let himself feel what the bond was demanding, he would be lost, completely, irrevocably lost. And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from, and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel, and at what moments of the night they find you. The attack came during the new moon. Aldrich was in a council meeting when the warning bells rang. Raiders from the Blackwood clan, enemies who'd been quiet since the last treaty, poured through the eastern gates. Not enough to take the castle, but enough to cause chaos. His first thought was of Sarah. He ran through corridors, guards flanking him, until he reached her chambers. The door was broken open, signs of struggle. Blood on the floor, not hers, he could tell by scent. But someone had fought here. His wolf erupted with rage. "Find her!" he roared. "Search every room, every passage!" A scream cut through the night, high and sharp and terrified. "Sarah!" Aldrich ran toward the sound, his transformation already starting. Bones cracked and reformed, claws extended. By the time he burst into the west tower, he was half-shifted, part man, part beast, all fury. 3 raiders had her cornered. One held a knife to her throat. She was fighting, kicking, biting, refusing to submit even with a blade against her skin. "That's my mate," his wolf thought with savage pride. "Let her go," Aldrich growled, his voice inhuman. The raiders turned. Their confidence evaporated when they saw their king transformed and murderous. "We didn't know she was yours," one started. Aldrich didn't let him finish. He moved like lightning, ripping the knife wielder away from Sarah and throwing him against the wall with bone-breaking force. The other 2 tried to run. He caught them both, claws tearing through leather and flesh. It was over in seconds. When the blood rage cleared, Aldrich stood panting among the bodies. His hands were shaking, not from exhaustion, but from the terror of what almost happened. He turned to Sarah. She was pressed against the wall, eyes wide, chest heaving. There was a thin cut on her neck where the knife had pressed too hard. The sight of her blood, even just a few drops, made his vision go red again. "Are you hurt?" His voice was still rough with the half-shift. She shook her head, but tears were streaming down her face, not from pain, from shock, from the realization of how close she'd come to dying. Aldrich crossed the space between them in 2 strides and pulled her against his chest. The bond sang with relief, with rightness, with the primal satisfaction of having his mate safe in his arms. "I've got you," he murmured into her hair. "You're safe. I promise, you're safe. Sarah collapsed against him, her fingers clutching his torn shirt, her whole body trembling. She didn't speak. She just held on, and Aldrich held her back, feeling every wall he'd built crumble to dust. He'd been so stupid, so focused on protecting his heart that he'd forgotten the most important rule. A mate unguarded was a mate at risk. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." She pulled back enough to look at him. Her gray eyes were fierce despite the tears. "You came for me. Always." The word came out before he could stop it. "I will always come for you." Something shifted between them then. The bond deepened, settling into place with a finality that felt like destiny accepting an apology. Sarah reached up, her fingers gentle as they touched his face. "You're bleeding." He hadn't even noticed. Claws had sliced his shoulder during the fight. It was nothing, would heal in hours. "It doesn't matter," he said. "It matters to me." The way she said it, soft and certain, broke something in him. All the fear, all the control, all the promises he'd made on a frozen grave. None of it mattered anymore. Not when she looked at him like he was worth caring about. "Sarah," he breathed. She rose on her toes and kissed him. It wasn't passionate or desperate. It was gentle, asking, not demanding, giving him the choice he'd refused to give himself. Aldrich kissed her back. Slowly at first, then deeper, his hands cradling her face like she was made of moonlight and miracles. The bond exploded between them, golden and overwhelming, connecting them in ways that went beyond flesh and blood. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sarah smiled, a real smile, the first he'd ever seen from her. "I'm not her," she said quietly. "I'm not Ilara. I'm not asking you to forget her or replace her. But I'm here, Aldrich. I'm your mate, and I'm not going anywhere." He pressed his forehead to hers, eyes closed, accepting what he'd fought for so long. "I know," he whispered. "I know." And for the first time since the moon marked her, Aldrich let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, fate knew what she was doing after all. The council was not pleased. "A slave?" Lord Brennan's voice dripped with disgust. "You expect us to accept a slave as our Luna Queen?" Aldrich sat at the head of the table, Sarah standing beside him. She wore a simple blue gown, her posture straight despite the hostile stares. The mark on her neck was visible now, undeniable proof of the moon's choice. "The goddess doesn't ask your permission," Aldrich said coldly. "Neither do I." "She has no bloodline," Lady Morgana argued. "No training, no allies, no—" "She has me." His voice cut through the room like steel. "That's all she needs." Sarah's hand found his under the table, squeezing gently. He squeezed back, drawing strength from her calm. She'd insisted on facing the council with him, refused to hide, while others decided her fate. "The people won't accept her," Brennan continued. "A king can have his diversions. But to formally mate with someone of no status—" "Careful." Aldrich's eyes flashed gold. "You're speaking about your future queen." The room went silent. Even Brennan had the sense to look nervous. Challenging an Alpha King's mate was dangerously close to challenging the king himself. Sarah straightened. "May I speak?" All eyes turned to her. Aldrich nodded, curious what she would say. "I understand your concerns," she began, her voice steady. "I have no title, no land, no army. I was bought from a cage 7 weeks ago. By every measure you value, I am nothing." Brennan smiled smugly. "But the moon doesn't measure worth in gold or bloodlines," Sarah continued. "She measures it in something you can't see or trade. And she marked me as this king's mate for a reason. Maybe that reason will become clear. Maybe it won't. But I'm not asking for your acceptance. I'm asking for your patience while I prove I'm worthy of the mark I carry." The council members exchanged glances. It was a careful answer, humble but not weak, acknowledging their concerns without surrendering her position. Lady Morgana leaned forward. "And what skills do you bring to this kingdom, girl? What can you offer beyond warming the king's bed?" Sarah's eyes flashed. "I survived 6 years of slavery without breaking. I learned to read wounds, mix herbs, calm trauma, and endure pain that would have killed softer people. I know what it means to have nothing and still find reasons to live. And I understand that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just refusing to die when everything tells you to give up." The room was quiet. "If that's not useful to a kingdom," Sarah finished, "then I don't know what is." Aldrich felt pride surge through the bond. His mate was magnificent. "The council will accept her," he said flatly, "or the council will be replaced. We're done here." He stood, pulling Sarah with him, and walked out before anyone could protest. Once they were in the hallway, Sarah exhaled shakily. "Did I do all right?" she asked. "You were perfect." He pulled her into an embrace, breathing in her scent. "They'll come around, and if they don't, it won't matter." "It matters to you," she said perceptively. "You need their support to rule effectively." "I need you more." She looked up at him, gray eyes soft. "When did you become so romantic, Alpha King? When you kissed me in that tower and made me remember what it means to feel something other than duty." They walked to the gardens, where winter roses still bloomed despite the cold. Sarah loved this place, said it reminded her that beautiful things could survive harsh conditions. "Tell me about her," Sarah said suddenly. "About Ilara." Aldrich tensed. "Why?" "Because she's part of you, part of your story. And I want to know all of you, not just the parts that came after me." He was quiet for a long moment, then spoke. "Ilara was fire, passionate, fierce, uncompromising. She challenged me constantly, made me better. We ruled together as true partners. You loved her very much. I did. And you're afraid I'll die too." He couldn't deny it. "Everyone I love dies, Sarah. It's like a curse." She took his hands. "Then we fight the curse together. I'm not asking you to stop mourning her. I'm asking you to trust that maybe the moon gave you a second chance because she knows you're strong enough to survive it. What if I'm not? Then I'll be strong enough for both of us." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "I'm falling in love with you," he admitted. "It terrifies me." "Good," Sarah said with a small smile. "I've been terrified since the moment I saw you. Now we can be terrified together." That night, they completed the mating bond, not in a grand ceremony, but in his chambers with only the moon as witness. It was gentle and profound, sealing them together in ways that went beyond physical. When it was done, Sarah traced the new mark that appeared over Aldrich's heart, a mirror to the crescent on her neck. "No more running," she whispered. "No more running," he agreed. Outside, the moon shone full and bright, as if the goddess herself was smiling. The poison was discovered 3 days before the coronation ceremony. One of the kitchen staff, a girl barely 16, confessed through tears that she'd been paid to lace Sarah's wine with wolfsbane. Not enough to kill, but enough to make her violently ill during the public ceremony. "Who paid you?" Aldrich demanded. "Lord Brennan's steward," the girl sobbed. "He said it was just a prank, that no one would get hurt." Aldrich's rage was cold and controlled. Lock Brennan in the tower, no visitors, no trial until after the coronation. Sarah placed a hand on his arm. "Let me talk to him first." "Absolutely not." "Aldrich." She met his eyes. "He tried to humiliate me, not kill me. If we execute him without understanding why, we create a martyr. Let me try to reach him. If I fail, then you can do whatever you think is necessary." He wanted to refuse, wanted to protect her from the man who'd tried to sabotage her. But he also knew she was right. A good queen needed to understand her enemies, not just destroy them. "Fine," he said, "but I'm coming with you." They went to the tower together. Brennan sat on a stone bench, looking older than his 50 years. When he saw them, he didn't stand or bow. "Come to gloat?" he asked bitterly. "I came to understand," Sarah said, pulling a chair close. "Why do you hate me so much?" "I don't hate you, girl. I hate what you represent." "Which is?" "Chaos." Brennan's voice was tired. "The old ways are dying. Bloodlines that have ruled for centuries are being pushed aside for fate, for moon-chosen bonds that ignore politics and strategy. My family has served this kingdom for 8 generations. We've bled for it, died for it, and now a slave girl with no name will sit on the throne because the goddess decided it should be so." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "You're afraid." "Of course I'm afraid. If bloodlines don't matter anymore, what's left? If any Omega can be chosen regardless of status, what happens to the structure that keeps kingdoms stable?" "It changes," Sarah said simply, "but change doesn't have to mean destruction. The moon chose me, yes, but she also chose Ilara before me, and Ilara was highborn, wasn't she?" Brennan nodded reluctantly. "So maybe the moon doesn't care about bloodlines or status. Maybe she just cares about finding the right person for the right king at the right time. And maybe that's better than forcing matches based on politics and land treaties." "Pretty words," Brennan muttered, "but you're still unproven." "Then let me prove myself." Sarah leaned forward. "Give me a chance, not because you believe in fate, but because you believe in your king. He chose to accept the bond. He chose me. Don't you trust his judgment?" That struck something. Brennan looked at Aldrich, really looked at him, and saw something that made his expression soften. "You love her," he said with surprise. "I do," Aldrich confirmed, "even after Ilara? Because of Ilara, she taught me what it meant to be a good king. Sarah is teaching me what it means to be a good man. I need both." Brennan was silent for a long time. Then he sighed. "I'm sorry. For the poison. For the disrespect. I was wrong." "You were scared," Sarah corrected gently. "But you don't have to be. I'm not here to destroy tradition. I'm here to build something new alongside it." Aldrich released Brennan with a warning and a fine. The Lord left humbled, and word spread quickly through the castle about the new Luna Queen's mercy. The coronation ceremony was perfect. Sarah wore silver and white, looking like moonlight made flesh. When Aldrich placed the crown on her head, the entire kingdom felt the bond between them pulse with power. That night, they stood on the balcony overlooking the city. Sarah leaned against him, the crown still on her head, looking more like a queen than anyone born to the title. "Happy?" Aldrich asked. "Terrified," she admitted, "but happy too." "That seems to be our theme." She laughed, and the sound was magic. "Subscribe if you believe mercy can crown even the fallen." Aldrich smiled. "I already did, the moment I bought you from that cage." And beneath the full moon, the Alpha King and his slave-turned-queen held each other, knowing that their story was just beginning. 6 months into her reign, Sarah discovered her gift. It happened during a border dispute with the Ironwood Pack. Tensions were high, war seemed inevitable, and Aldrich was preparing troops for battle. Sarah insisted on attending the negotiations. The Ironwood Alpha, a brutal man named Kale, laughed when she entered the tent. "The slave queen comes to play diplomat? This should be entertaining." Sarah didn't flinch. "I came to prevent unnecessary bloodshed. Then tell your mate to surrender the Eastern Territories." "I came to find a solution both packs can accept." Kale leaned forward, predatory. "There is no solution. Your king stole land that belonged to my father. I want it back. If he refuses, we go to war." Sarah placed her hands on the negotiation table. The moment her skin touched wood, something shifted. Her eyes glowed faint silver, and suddenly she could see, really see, the truth beneath Kale's anger. "Your father didn't own that land," she said quietly. "He won it in a card game from a drunk alpha 40 years ago. The deed was never legal, and you know that." Kyle went pale. "How did you— You don't want the land," Sarah continued, her voice taking on an otherworldly quality. "You want validation, proof that your father wasn't a cheat and a liar, proof that your bloodline deserves respect." The silver light intensified. Everyone in the tent felt it, a presence, ancient and knowing, speaking through Sarah. "I see your shame," she whispered. "The way your pack looks at you, the way they whisper that you're not as strong as your father, that you're weak for wanting peace. But war won't make you strong, Kyle. It'll just make you dead. Because Aldrich will destroy you, and your pack will scatter, and your name will be forgotten." Kyle was shaking now. "What are you?" "I'm the moon's voice when she chooses to speak through me." Sarah's eyes cleared, the silver fading. She swayed slightly, exhausted. "The land stays with us, but in exchange, we'll provide Ironwood with trade access to our southern ports. Your pack can prosper through commerce instead of conquest. You can be remembered as the alpha who brought wealth, not war. That's your choice." Kyle stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Agreed." The negotiations concluded peacefully. As they left, Aldrich pulled Sarah aside. "What was that?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I touched the table and suddenly I could see. Everything. His fears, his lies, his truths. It was like the moon gave me insight into his soul." "You're a pathfinder," Aldrich breathed. "A seer. It's a gift that appears once every few generations." "Is it dangerous?" "Potentially. If others find out, they'll either worship you or fear you." "Then we keep it quiet," Sarah decided. "I'll only use it when absolutely necessary." But word spread anyway. Within weeks, other packs were requesting her counsel. Border disputes, succession crises, treaty negotiations. Everyone wanted the Luna Queen who could see truth. Sarah handled it with grace, but Aldrich saw the exhaustion building. Each use of her gift drained her, and she was too generous with her power. "You need to rest," he told her after a particularly difficult session. "I can't. People need help. And you need to survive." He pulled her close. "What good is saving everyone else if you burn yourself out?" She leaned into him, and he felt her weariness through the bond. "I just want to be useful, to prove I deserve this crown." "Sarah." He tilted her face up. "You proved that the day you chose to live when everything told you to die. You don't owe anyone anything more." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I was so broken when you found me. Sometimes I still feel like that girl in the cage, waiting for someone to realize I'm not worth keeping." "Then let me remind you every day." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You are worth everything. You are my queen, my mate, my heart. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt that again." That night, they made love slowly, reverently, reconnecting through the bond. And when Sarah finally slept, Aldrich held her and swore to protect her, not just from external threats, but from the weight of her own generosity. Because queens needed protecting too, even the ones who saved everyone else. The final test came during the winter solstice. A sickness spread through the kingdom, a plague that targeted wolves specifically, burning through packs like wildfire. Aldrich fell ill within days. His fever raged, his wolf retreating deep inside to protect itself. Sarah refused to leave his side. The physicians tried everything: herbs, potions, bloodletting. Nothing worked. The sickness was supernatural in origin, a curse from a rival pack jealous of Aldrich's power. "You need to quarantine yourself," Lady Morgana urged. "If you catch it—" "I won't," Sarah said with certainty. "How can you know?" "Because the moon told me." But she didn't say that aloud. Instead, she held Aldrich's burning hand and prayed. On the third night, when his breathing grew shallow and the bond started to fray, Sarah made a choice. She placed both hands on his chest, closed her eyes, and called the gift. Not to see truth this time, but to heal. She poured everything she had into him, her strength, her life force, her very soul, demanding the sickness leave him. Silver light exploded from her palms. The room shook. Outside, the full moon blazed brighter than ever before. When the light faded, Aldrich gasped awake. His fever broke. His wolf stirred, healthy and whole. But Sarah collapsed. "No!" Aldrich caught her, pulling her into his lap. "Sarah, stay with me, please." Her eyes fluttered open, gray and distant. "I told you I'd be strong enough for both of us." "You're not dying. I won't allow it." She smiled weakly. "You don't get to decide, my king. The moon does." "Then I'll fight the moon. I'll fight fate. I'll fight everything to keep you here." "Don't." She touched his face. "If I die having been loved. That's more than most slaves ever get. That's more than I ever dreamed possible." "You're not dying," his voice broke. "You're my mate, my queen, my everything. You don't get to give up." "I'm not giving up. I'm just tired." The bond between them flickered. Aldrich felt her slipping away, felt the connection unraveling, and his wolf howled with agony. "Please," he begged, "please don't leave me. I can't survive losing another mate." "I won't." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "You will, because you're strong. Stronger than you believe. Not without you." She kissed him one last time, soft and sweet. Then her eyes closed. The bond went silent. Aldrich roared, the sound inhuman and broken. He held her body, rocking back and forth, begging the moon to take him instead. He'd survived loss before, but this was annihilation. The room filled with silver light. The moon herself descended, taking form as a woman made of starlight. "Alpha King," she said gently, "your mate gave her life to save yours." "Take mine instead," Aldrich snarled. "Let her live. That's not how sacrifice works. She chose freely, with love." "I don't care. I want her back." The goddess studied him. "You swore you would never love again after Alara died. Yet here you are, broken by love for a second time. Have you learned nothing?" "I learned that loving is worth the pain." Aldrich's tears fell on Sarah's still face. "I learned that one moment with her was better than a lifetime alone. I learned that the moon doesn't give second chances without reason. So please, please, if you have any mercy, bring her back." The goddess smiled. "You have learned, and because you have, I will grant you this one gift." She touched Sarah's forehead. Color returned to her cheeks. Her chest rose with breath. The bond surged back to life, stronger than ever. Sarah's eyes opened. "Aldrich," she whispered. He pulled her against him, sobbing with relief. "I'm here. I'm here. You're alive." "I am?" She looked at the goddess, understanding dawning. "Why?" "Because your mate finally learned that love isn't weakness," the moon said. "It's the only thing strong enough to bargain with fate. You may both live long and rule well, but remember, every gift has a price. You gave your life for his. Someday he will have to give something equally precious for yours." Then she vanished. Sarah and Aldrich held each other, alive and whole and together. The sickness lifted from the kingdom. The curse broke. And when dawn came, they stood on the balcony and watched the sun rise on a kingdom saved by love. If your heart beat alongside ours, like, comment, and subscribe, Sarah murmured, leaning into her mate. Because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive. Aldrich kissed the top of her head. "Forever? Forever," she promised. And beneath the fading stars, The Alpha King, who swore never to love again, held the slave girl who taught him that oaths meant nothing to fate and everything to redemption.